candid conversation with the Haitian community and the Haitian press. So we would like to welcome you, soon to be elected, Casilda Elena Roper Simpson and Judge ROSEMARY Montalbo. I know during this time is busy campaigning with 6 days left until election day. So we would really like to thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us here for this candid conversation with the Haitian community. And also I would love to thank the Haitian press that's here today. So today we have IET, we have Union 9, we have Viva Marketing, and Lazio Independence, and also we have Caribbean Imaging. Okay. Excuse me. Yes, so we would like to welcome you all for this candid conversation with our soon-to-be elected. So let us get started, and we would like to give you the platform so you can tell us all about you. So we're going to start with you, Judge ROSEMARY. So you can just tell us who you are and what you have been doing.
Thank you for having us. So my name is ROSEMARY Montalbo, and I am presently a Supreme Court judge. I have been a judge for 7 years. I was elected to the civil court in 2014, and I sat in the criminal court for 3 years. And in the criminal court, I had a specialty part, domestic violence and elder abuse. And elder abuse does not only include the abuse, physical abuse of the elderly, but the financial exploitation of the elderly, which is also a component of what's happening in the surrogate court. I then also sat in the civil court for 2 years after that, and now 2 years in the Supreme Court. So I have been a judge for 7 years and a lawyer for 30 years. The surrogate court is a specialty court. It handles wills, trusts, estates, guardianships, and a few adoptions. The bulk of the work is really the transfer of generational wealth. And when you hear the word wealth, you think like, oh, that's for wealthy people. But it's really for people who have made sacrifices, who were lucky enough to acquire property, whether it's money or real estate in our borough, in our communities. Property that was purchased maybe by parents or grandparents. Now, the property value in Brooklyn has... We just roll with the punches. So it's doubled, sometimes tripled the value. And what happens when property value goes up or value goes up, predators come out. And we're on the map. Brooklyn is on the map. You turn on the TV, you turn on Netflix, and they're in Brooklyn. You watch movies, and they're in Brooklyn. You know, there are restaurants and buildings being built all over, so the property values are up. What's happening is, unfortunately, so many people have died with COVID and even before. So when someone dies, these lists are being created. So anyone who owns property who dies gets on a list, and then those lists are sold. And then what happens is companies buy those lists and they try to find heirs, people who will inherit that property, and they contact them. So what I say is those people are vulnerable, they're scared, they're confused. Some of them don't know how to navigate. Most people don't know how to navigate the courts. And many are asset rich because they potentially own a home now, but they're cash poor. So what these people are telling them, and again, I use the word predator because they're looking to take advantage. They tell them, you know, I know you stand to inherit because your mother, your grandmother, your aunt, your uncle died, and we're willing to help you. We will offer you money for your property, usually a lot less than the property is worth, and we'll help you navigate. If not, some people say, well, I think it's worth more. And they say, well, do you have money, $25,000 to hire an attorney? Do Do you know how to go to court? If you don't know how to do this, it could take 5 years, it could take 8 years, but we'll give you cash money in 60 days. A lot of people are like, okay, I guess I'm in a position where I have to do this or else I'm never going to see my money. Those agreements are not illegal because people are signing. And I go back to my life. My home went into foreclosure in the late 80s. And my father signed a $10,000 note that almost cost him the house. That's why I'm so passionate about this work. The surrogate court, the surrogate judge is the gatekeeper to those agreements and can say, no, I'm not allowing this transfer of property when I know the property is worth $1 million for $500 because these people are being taken advantage of. And that needs to happen. I know how to do that. As a Supreme Court judge, I've dealt with the issue of deed transfers. I've dealt with contracts. As a criminal court judge, I've dealt with the issues where the elderly were exploited. Sometimes we have people living on their own and they get influenced by people that come into their life that they don't even know. And they sign over, whether it's their deed or a will that their family doesn't even know happened until they die. Those wills, if they're contested, have to be decided by the surrogate. And things that you look at are like, if this person was 88 years old or 80, did they understand what they were doing at that time? They're very sensitive issues. They're complex issues. And I believe my 30 years of experience, my ability to dissect the criminal aspect of it, I'm not afraid to say this is a forgery. I'm not afraid to say there's something's not right. We need to look into this. Also, guardianships for the disabled, intellectual and developmentally disabled, that happens when COVID hit. A lot of adults had, or people had adult children with disabilities living in their home. If their parent or parents die and there's not a guardian who's coming forward, the court has to appoint someone. And it's very important that when the surrogate looks at that they look at the whole picture and they look at the community and they look at what background that person, and they assign someone who understands the culture and is going to be accountable to care for that person. One other thing I want to touch on is tax liens. Tax liens are, rampant in our county. The city sells those liens. So someone gets a tax bill and they put it on the side often because most people, when they can't pay a bill, just put it on the side and say, I'm going to get to it. I think most people don't say, I'll never get to it, but I'll get to it. And whether they forget or they just are not in a position, the city sells those liens. If your lien gets sold, a $3,000 lien could turn into hundreds of thousands. So that's another conversation that people need to have in our communities. To say, if you get a tax bill, a water bill, and you can't pay, you have to come to the table with the city, negotiate a payment plan. Once you enter into a payment plan, they can't sell it. But if you don't contact them, they will sell it. My father-in-law inherited a home in Bushwick that his parents owned. They had a bakery, they worked there, he lived there, and he lost it to a tax lien because he took the bill and he put it on the side. He was like, I'll get to it, I'll get to it. He didn't tell anyone in his family, and he lost the home. This is happening. These courts are very important, but I believe I've said in the past, education in our communities is very important. And as judges, as a surrogate and other judges, we're able to go into communities and to talk to people. We're not allowed to give legal advice, but we can educate and say the importance of planning, the importance of discussing with your children what you have and how you want it to just be distributed, and put it in writing. Because I've spoken to people over the last year who say, oh, I have 4 children and we all love each other. We see each other all the time. We have dinner together once a week. We go on vacation every year. And when I die, I just want everyone to split everything equally. And I say, you know what? Money is a funny thing, and everyone loves each other until money is involved. So if it's your wish, put it in writing, because the last thing you want to do when you've sacrificed and you've worked hard to obtain something is to leave a mess. Because I have adult children, and I know, most children will say, oh, look at the mess my mother left. Look at the mess my parents left. They should have thought about us, and now their children are not speaking. The legacy that we leave should be smooth, should be easy, and should be what the person wants. So again, when you consider voting for the surrogate, please consider all the years of experience that I have and the knowledge in this area. I've been the administrator of an estate that I know, so I know the complexity of the issues, because if not, everyone suffers.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Rosemary Montalbano, and election day, early voting has already started, but election day, the final day, is June 22nd. So I ask you to vote for me. Thank you.
Now, Ms. Casilda, can you tell us about you?
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me here this evening. My name is Casilda Roper Simpson. I am an immigrant from Panama. I came to this country when I was 4 or 5 years old. My family, my mom, my mama, my papa, my siblings. I'm fourth or sixth, and I'm certainly my parents' favorite. English is my second language. Spanish is the first language. When I came to this country, I was educated in this country. When I went to school, when I got to 6th grade, I had difficulties with the English language. I couldn't read. They told my mom I had difficulties, and I was very embarrassed. But I was determined to work on my reading skills. And I went to the library on Eastern Parkway in Schenectady. I grew up in Crown Heights. I'm from Crown Heights. And I went to the library every day and taught myself how to read. And then when I was in junior high school, I was probably about 11 or 12, they told my mama that I wasn't doing well in social studies. And my mother, education is the key. Education, education, education is the only thing we heard in my household. My mother put me in my room with that red social studies book. I still remember the color. And I learned the Constitution. And those 3 words I learned, we the people. And I realized that with we the people, it wasn't them, or them, it was all of us. And back then, what I remembered back then was, I had a lot of my family that was being deported back to Panama. And I didn't understand what was going on because I was younger. I knew they were here today and they were gone. And I wasn't sure then what was going on, but I learned later as I got older. And where I lived in Crown Heights, it was a very diverse community. We had Panamanians, Trinidadians, we had Haitians, we had Bayesian, we had Tunisians. It was a very, very, very diverse community. And being there, I learned so many cultures, and I learned so many things. And I knew that there was a lot missing in our community, and I knew I wanted to be a lawyer. But I didn't think that I could because of my English disabilities that I thought I had. So when I graduated from high school, I decided that I wanted to be still a part of the legal field. So I became a legal secretary. And then I started seeing the lawyers, and I said, I think I could do this stuff. They're not that smart. So then I went on to my 4-year college, and I got my bachelor's degree. And I became a paralegal, and I started working with even more attorneys. And I went to the DA's office in Brooklyn, County District Attorney's office. Great attorneys. They were smart. But I said, I can do this. And I went to law school. I went to Brooklyn Law School, and I have my 4-year-old daughter and my 9-month-old daughter in my first year of law school. And I thought it was going to be tough, but I had the best ever support system. I had my village. I had my mama, my sisters, my cousin, my tio, my tias, and they all helped me. And I graduated from law school. And as a young attorney, right out of law school in 1997, I had one of the worst police brutality cases in the history of New York City, Mr. Abner Williams. And who would have thought that anyone could receive such treatment from the NYPD? No one could have ever told me that. But I was a young attorney working alongside Mr. Cochran and some other attorneys. And seeing what happened in the community that I lived in, I learned even more then that I needed to be the champion and the advocate for more people in my community. So I had other police brutality cases, and those other police brutality cases, Mr. Patrick Bailey. And the case with Mr. Patrick Bailey is one of the officers that shot Mr. Bailey later, unfortunately, was an officer who shot Mr. Amadou Diallo. And I continue to be the attorney that I am, doing those type of cases. I've been a criminal defense attorney for over 20 years, since 1996. I was an H&B attorney, which means that if you could not afford an attorney, you were assigned to an attorney like myself, because legal aid could not represent you. I also was a managing attorney for a foster care agency on Fulton Street, handling neglect cases, abuse cases, adoption cases. I've also did civil cases, civil trials, slip and fall. You fell in the street and you needed to sue, I handled a case like that. If you had an auto accident and you had suffered injuries, I did those trials. I have done criminal trials. I've done civil cases. When you get elected to civil court, you can be placed in criminal court, you can be placed in family court, or civil court. You need to make sure that you find an attorney, an elected attorney that will be a judge that can take on that position in civil court. Not someone to learn on the job. I'm that person. I have handled every case that could possibly come in front of me in criminal court, in family court, and civil court. And guess what? Before the pandemic, we had a backlog in our system, in our justice system. I used to go to court for the last 20-something years, and this wheel of justice has just been so slowly. Can you imagine what it's like now in the pandemic? You want someone that can hit the ground running, that don't have to go look in a book and research. Yes, as attorneys, we're taught to research. And yes, when you become a judge, you can take you to judge school. Judge school? Okay, teach me the process for the courthouse, but don't teach me the laws that I need to see a person that comes in front of me. And I'm saying to you, look at my credentials. Look to see what I've done. 19 years ago, before I got all the gray hairs that I have, I represented an individual, his name is Jaime Davidson. And I did his appeal. He received 3 life sentences, plus 85 years. 3 life sentences and 85 years. And I did his appeal. He was released January 20th, 2021, after serving 29 years in jail on clemency for innocence. I didn't become an attorney because I thought I was going to be rich. I became an attorney because I wanted to do for my community. And when I say my community, I mean the whole community of everyone. I live in a diverse community. I've met different people along my journey. When I look to individuals and say, this is who you are. I have 3 children, and those of us who have children know that they all have different personalities. My kids are so different, it's just amazing. So when we have individuals that come in front of us as a judge, we have to look at them on an individual basis and not put them all in one basket. And presently, I am an administrative judge. And presently, I conduct hearings. I do social service cases. I do food stamp, public assistance, Medicaid. And I look at all of those individuals on an individual basis. And oftentimes, I give you a perfect example. I have individuals who speak a different language, whether it be Creole or Spanish. And sometimes they're so proud, they don't want to ask for an interpreter. And I have to put my foot down and say, no, I'm going to get you an interpreter. Because I want you to understand the process. And I want you to understand why you didn't get your food stamps and why maybe you should have. And if you don't understand it, I want to make sure that you can get the legal counsel that you should have. And that's the same thing that I would do while I'm on the bench, should I be elected and God allows me to win this election. But I'm asking you to look at my opponent. I'm not telling you not to, because I know when you do that, you will realize that although they may be qualified to run for the position, they are not as qualified as I am to serve this position. I have been an attorney for the people of Brooklyn, and I will be a judge for the people. I take all that I am, that little girl that was 10, 11 years old that couldn't speak English properly, that couldn't read according to the educators. and I have been fighting the fight, and I will fight as a judge. Don't be dismayed that judges can't do, because we have discretion. And that discretion that we have, it goes a long way. Some judges abuse that discretion, but some judges use that to make things better. Because when you go to criminal court and you have a young person in front of you, it can make a big difference as to how that young person can be rehabbed. I used to work with a judge called Betty Williams in the drug treatment court, and she took every defendant that came in front of her and used and played and provided them with all the resources they needed to beat the drug addiction and to get back in a better place. I would model her with every individual that come in front of me, whether it's civil court, criminal court, or family court. And tell me why anyone would not want a judge like myself. Thank you so very much. Again, I thank you all for thinking that a person like me should represent you and must represent you. My name is Casilda.
Thank you, ladies. So now we have a couple of questions from some of the media that was here. So we're going to start with the first question that was from Tudaiti, and they wanted to know, what are the main functions? So we're going to go both ways. So what are the main functions in the surrogate court?
So the surrogate court has many different departments, but the main function is the transfer of generational wealth. So the processing, the probating of the wills and the trusts, and any contests that come with the will.
Okay, so let's say somebody doesn't have a will, but we know that
Yes.
it's prevalent in our community.
Yes.
Where people just feel like you said that we'll do the right thing once I'm gone.
Yes.
So let's say
Yes.
that happens and it comes before you. How do you handle that?
So what happens is when someone does not have a will, then the laws will, depending on whether they're married, the spouse gets a percentage, how many children. If it's only children, the children divide. And sometimes what happens is you have people trying to get in on it, but that is the role of the surrogate, to determine who gets what.
And the same question for you, but pertaining to the civil court, what is the main function of the civil court?
The main function of the civil court is to hear cases with a cap of $25,000. And cases include housing court, if you get injured, if there's a breach of contract, anything where you feel that you were wrong. And also, as I stated earlier, you can be assigned to criminal court. And criminal court, hear people who commit crimes. And one of the great things that I liked about criminal court is they have different courts. They have youth court, where they handle individuals, young people. They have the drug treatment part, where they handle people who they can show that they were addicted to help them fight and correct those addictions. They also have a veteran court. So there are different areas. In family court, which handles anything with neglect cases, abuse cases, adoption cases, which is one of my favorite cases to do, because if a foster care parent held the child long enough, the children long enough, they could adopt them. That was one of my favorite cases to do. Termination of parental rights were terminating the parent, one of the parents or both of the parents' rights. Those were tough, but they're lengthy. They didn't just take your children away. It was a whole process. So that would be what the judge that would be elected to this position will handle, child support cases in family court. But also in civil court, you have small claims court. If you had a contractor that didn't do the work properly, if you had a fender bender, if you loan, your boyfriend money, you're no longer together, you want to go to court, those kind of things, And I've been an arbitrator for a few years also, and I've heard cases like that. So those are in a nutshell the kind of cases that you have. But keep in mind that housing court do have judges assigned to housing court, but as a civil court judge, you can't hear those cases. You also have debt collection cases with the credit card company when you don't pay them, or you forgot to pay them, or you didn't pay them, or you owe them. Those are also cases that you hear. And because a lot of individuals in civil court often are pro se, which means that they don't have an attorney. When you're elected to this position, you have to have the ability to know how to work with pro se individuals. And the cases that I handle now as an administrative judge, 99% of the individuals who I hear their cases come without an attorney.
That's just crazy. That's what it is, that's the reality.
I think, can I just say also that people are not aware that if they can't afford an attorney, that they should not be afraid to go to court. Because as judges, you know, and in the civil court, especially when I sat there, most people do not, you know, and I always said, I will never let someone leave the courtroom and not understand what they agreed to. So there are volunteer lawyers. It's called the volunteer lawyers. They don't just show up. It's an actual organization. But as judges, we could ask them to appear on a case for someone. Because our role is to protect people as well and not let them be taken advantage of. And it's a very important role. And, you know, I've seen all too many times people agree to things, whether, like we said earlier, over the phone or in the hallway. They come to court, they owe money, and they agree to something in the hallway, but they can't. They can't, like, for example, like a Brooklyn Union Gas, they come and they try to shut your utility off. And then people come to court and they agree in the hallway. And then I said, like, okay, well, we have to go over it. And I remember some of the clerks saying, oh, you could just put it on the side and sign it. And I say, no one will leave here not understanding what they're agreeing to. I will sign once I understand. And often, more than half, when I explained it, they said, well, I didn't know that. You know, and I say, well, can you pay? You've agreed to $150 a month. And they're like, well, I'm going to try. I'm like, no, you know, we're not going to set you up for failure. We have to come to an agreement that you could live with. And, you know, the utilities will, and when you say judge's discretion, speak to them and come down to something that people can agree to. It's a very important role that people don't realize when they think, you know, when they're electing judges, that it should be a judge who will listen, who will explain. It's a very important aspect, and they should not be afraid to come to court.
The next question is from Union 9, and it is, what is your views on affordable housing for homeless?
So, do you want me to answer? So as judicial candidates, that's a policy question. We're not allowed to answer because I'm a sitting judge and Casilda is running for judge. Our elections are to be based on our qualifications and our experience, whether it be as lawyers or judges and the work that we've done up until this date. But to discuss, we can't change the law, and affordable housing is something that the city council would handle. It's our job to apply the law.
Thank you for that clarification. The next question is going to be from me. And it is, you guys spoke about educating and informing the community. And we know as it stands right now, there's a lot of things happening where it's just a whirlwind. And like you said, people are afraid of court and they don't want to go in, and they sometimes, it's just the fear. And for me being the child of an immigrant, Asian immigrants, we just don't like to go to court.
Right.
It's like, we want to pay our bills and make sure that we go. How will you set up some information? I don't know, whether it be classes, webinars, and everything else to help inform them and educate them on all of these things that the circuit court is there for, and also the civil court. Because when Haitians say civil court, that's like a bad word. You don't want to go to court, you know, so.
As I stated, as judges, we can educate, and I think it's very important, and I've been discussing with people during the campaign, that a community should invite us. I've been invited. I've spoken to precinct council meetings, to seniors regarding some of these issues. that they could be educated by us about debt, about wills, about trust, about, sometimes you say people take out life insurance policy and then they have it for 20 years and the person that they first listed as their beneficiary is dead and they haven't changed it. Like, we need to constantly tell people, and we will appear anytime people invite us. So I always say I have to take the show on the road, and hopefully, things are opening up now, but to really discuss with people. I too am the child of immigrants. My father came to this country, he landed in Bushwick from Sicily, and that's where we stayed. It was a struggling community and we struggled as well. He was in his 30s. He never mastered the language. But when we talk about interpreters, I would say to him, but that's not what somebody said, because I was always the interpreter. And he's like, I understood what he said, but he didn't. So it's very important that you exercise your rights, and your right is to have an interpreter. And I've done the same thing, where I say, if you don't you could go to the store, you could communicate with your neighbors in English, but when you come to court, you need to understand 100%. And some of the legal language is very difficult. So please, we have every language, every dialect, and if we don't have it, we'll get it. I've had interpreters on cases where the people are looking, I'm like, do you understand? And they're like, not really, because it's a different dialect. And we could order it.
For me, I'm a firm believer in educating. I'm an adjunct professor. Presently, I've been teaching for the last 12 to 13 years at a particular university, Malloy College. And I teach criminal justice, I teach family law, I teach criminal, my last semester was the Supreme Court in its cases. And I also teach tort. And I think it's important to make sure that the community is educated. Knowledge and information is power. And over the years, last 5 to 10 years, I had a show called Your Rights. So I have been educating our community with making sure that through the radio station that they were educated on what was going on in the court system. As an elected judge, I truly believe, because attorneys are responsible for our commitment as attorneys to do pro bono cases. I think judges should also be responsible to go out into the community and educate. And I agree with Judge Montalbo that we should take it on the road. We should go into the community, that we should make sure that we go have community in conversations, and not necessarily in our language, but in the language where the community is. Because whether we want to be honest, and whether we want to stay and be completely sure about everything, we live in very segregated communities. We have the Haitian community, we have the Panamanian community, we have the Italian community. Let's go to those communities and speak to people in their language. And it's true. When I have my hearings, folks will say, no, I speak English, but I can hear and get a sense that they're not understanding. And I said, no, I'm getting you an interpreter, because I want you to understand. So when they come and when we go into the community, we want to make sure that they understand. Because there's a process. There's a process in court. And the process that we have in court isn't what we make up. It's called the CPLR. And that process has to be followed. And there's a decorum in court. So just because you have my boyfriend didn't pay me back my money, no, that's not the process. It's a process. It's a process.
Why is it that the boyfriend?
Okay, my girlfriend didn't give me back my money. But we have to make sure that we understand what's going on. And we need to go to the community. Don't tell the community, come to court at 6 o'clock on a Friday. No. Let's go to them. I have been mentoring young people for a very long time. And I don't really necessarily think it should just be young people. Because around time of election, I'm sure most of us in this audience have people calling and saying, who should I vote for? Right? But not only should we tell them who should they vote for, we should tell them why they should be voting for them. Education is the key. Knowledge and information is power, and we need to educate our community. And I know that my mother, who had an 8th, 9th grade education, made sure that we were educated. She educated herself in this country. So I know as an immigrant that I came here with my parents, and my father, who was a carpenter and died as a skycap, made sure that they educated themselves to what they needed. They used to go to the political club, and they used to walk around the corner. I'm like, where are these people going? And I'm not political. I'm for my people.
Judge Rosemary, the next question is for you, and the question is, how would you handle appointing the public administrator in the surrogate court?
So right now, the role of the surrogates, 2 surrogates, is to appoint the public administrator. There is some legislation pending that would give that to the mayor. The public administrator, as it stands now, is the equivalent of a commissioner. They're not paid by the court system. They're paid by the mayor's office and by the city of New York. So if the legislation changes, I have no problem with the mayor's office doing that. They would have their vetting process. If it is on me, as it is now, I would get together with the surrogate who is now remaining, Harriet Thompson, and we would have to decide, the needs of the court are paramount, and that person's background, their history, what they've done, what they've shown, really, because like us as judges, it's all about what we have done to this point. Or is that person prepared to handle this big responsibility? Because the public administrator's office handles all of the property of people who have deceased that don't have family. And sometimes that's millions, often millions of dollars in property, in personal items, in artwork, in jewelry. You'd be surprised how many people do not make arrangements and do not have family or people that they have designated who they want to give to. So it's very important, but they are a fiduciary. So it's a big responsibility, and that person has to be accountable. There have to be checks and balances, and it's not something that I would do lightly.
That's all for our questions. And again, we would really thank the both of you for taking time out. We know you're truly busy with your schedules and going around everywhere with 6 more days left until election day. So guys, remember 6 more days. Do your due diligence and get out, read up on your candidates and find out what it's about. It's all about your options and your choices. So once again, Judge Montalbano, I want to thank you. And Attorney Casilda Roper-Simpson, I also would like to thank you. And for the media, thank you for coming out and covering this and letting our community understand and know that it's all about options and choices. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for having
Ok, bonsoir tout le monde, bonsoir. Yo mande parler créole, mais nous connaissons si créole quand même, il pas tellement long. So, n'a bien des oreilles nous tout faire pour nous comprendre ça me dit là. À soir nous avons gagné un juge, ROSEMARY MONTALBO, qui est un juge qui passe sous civil court in the Avenue. Aí a gente continua pelo e poder mesmo camper na situação para ter na problema. A gente tudo que é a que é Casilda Ilenari, Roper Simpson e mesmo lá fui juiz civil lá no governo e ele por mostrar por informar que sabe mesmo diverso. After tous les candidats ont chargé d'expérience. Ils ont rencontré les travail et en bataille avec vous entendez que Madame Cassim Gali même, il était jeune avocat au moment des caisses à l'environnement. Tout à l'heure, c'est le monde des environnement. C'est lui-même qui travaille sur ça. So, c'est ça que je dis. En créole, comme nous le créole là, mais c'est ça que je dis. Et moi-même, notre femme, c'est Mary, et nous avons développé notre programme.
Just to give a wrap up of why they should.
Personally, Catherine personally. Still library? No, still library.
That's why you did that, I have someone to take over.
All right, so let me make sure. Your name.
Yep.
And then ask directly for the vote.
Do I say why? Or just?
No, just asking the community for vote. You can say why if you want to. Make it short.
Yeah, very short. So my name is Rosemary Montalbano. I am running for surrogate court judge. I am presently a Supreme Court judge. I've been a judge for 7 years and a lawyer for 30 years. I'm the only candidate with the experience that's necessary to handle the complexity of the cases in surrogate court. Please know, when you elect me, you elect someone who cares about community and about people and understands that people are being taken advantage of. And I want to stop that. Thank you. So on June 22nd, please vote for Rosemary Montalbano for surrogate court judge.
Thank you.
Tell me when. My name is Casilda Roper Simpson, and I am running for Civil Court Judge, Kings County in Brooklyn. The election is June 22nd, 2021, and I am prepared for this position. I am presently an administrative law judge and also an adjunct professor teaching criminal justice. I have been a criminal defense attorney, I have managed a foster care agency, and I have managed and handled and conducted criminal and civil trials. I was one of the first attorneys on the Abner Louima case, the Patrick Bailey case, who was killed and shot by a police officer that later shot Mr. Amadou Diallo. I have been an attorney for the people of Kings County, and I will be a judge for the people of Brooklyn. Thank you. Please vote June 22nd for Casilda Roper Simpson.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Tem besoin